Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. Nice to see you today. My name is Dustin Cormier, and this is How to Rock Astrology. Today we're going to be talking about what it's like when you have your natal sun in the sign of Aquarius and your natal Mars is in the sign of Pisces. Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is a good sign combination. Sun does okay in Aquarius, at least because it's close to its exaltation in Aries, which means it has lots of energy, lots of potential power. And it does get grounded by Saturn, which can technically be good. Saturn anciently is the ruler of Aquarius, even more prominently than Uranus, I would say. I'm a tropical Vedic astrologer, which means I use Western measurements. I don't go back 24 degrees like other Vedic astrologers, but I do capitalize on the Vedic way of interpreting a chart, and I try to introduce that in all my videos. But essentially, this is a conglomeration of all these philosophies, and whenever I say something like that, I try to wield it with sense and explain why the Indian tradition says this about this or that placement. The sun, the sun doesn't do great in Aquarius because Saturn is an enemy to the sun. And we're going to talk about how Mars in Pisces is in a good position. And it's going to add a little bit of passion, a little bit of self-discernment, a little bit of an emotional attunement to what is essentially the very dry, detached, emotionless Aquarius sun. So, welcome. That's kind of my spiel today. And then at the very end, we're going to read a little bit from Erotic Astrology by Phyllis Vega to get a grounded sense of how you are going to apply yourself in the yang outgoing dynamic of your sexual chemistry. The sun is not in its favorite place in Aquarius. I'll explain. First thing I should say, actually, if you want to hear about Mars and Pisces, check out the start of this series to find out strictly what Mars and Pisces does. In this video, we're going to talk about what that Mars and Pisces brings, essentially, to the Aquarian ego, the Aquarian sun consciousness. In all of my videos, I like to state that the sun is the king of the chart, where Mars, in the Indian tradition of astrology, Mars is the right arm, it's the sword of the king. It's the lieutenant. And usually we want the lieutenant and the king to be on the same page. Usually that's ideal. Now, when the king is kind of in a different country that's not his own country in a way. It's kind of like what the sun being in Aquarius, the sun is not exactly in its home country. It's listening to what the ways of this new country is. That's Saturn. That's the world. And the world and your responsibilities and your field of study. Aquarians detach themselves. They take themselves out of the picture and surrender themselves to whatever field they've chosen to get themselves into. That's Saturn's glory. The sun in Aquarius gets the glory of Saturn because it's objective and detached and can detach itself from its emotions and from its personal needs. It's very good at that. In fact, that's how it throws its weight around, Aquarius, by being the tough guy who ends up being a leader for everybody else because everyone else is thinking about themselves and not necessarily what really objectively needs to be done in the group. We all have our little personal wheels of limitations and restrictions, and we can all get those things figured out inside of us if we cater to what we all need in the collective sphere. And Aquarius is good at that. But where Aquarius loses is that they forget that the self in one is the self in all. Aquarius tends to be so dryly attached to the collective needs that they forget about the individual. They forget about themselves, and they can also forget about their coworkers as an individual preference. Now, this king, this sun, the sun being the king, Yours is a sun which is kind of like not in its own home country. Thankfully, you have a lieutenant, Mars, who is almost a reminder to you, an ambassador to your home country, saying, my lord, this may not be our country, but this is the new land that we are now seeking to conquer. We are seeking to establish ourselves, our nation, our signature in this world that's unfolding for us, because your life is your kingdom. You might not think that way because you're an Aquarius, and you think that everybody is really just, a servant for the bigger collective goals that we have as a collective. And that's true, but you got to understand that it's both and. One of my favorite phrases comes from a 70s novel called Zodiac Sounds. It's this cool album where the music is an expression of the signs, and there's little bits of poetry for each sign. And the bit of poetry they give for Aquarius is this: in the opal light of Aquarius, all men can blend and still be essentially what they are. And this is the trick that Aquarius has to learn. Now, the sun in Aquarius here is very used to knowing that all men have to blend. This is a melting pot, and we all are individuals, but we all gotta put our individuality towards a purpose where we can all have an aesthetic resonance and harmony and work together, because we're greater. All of us working together is a sum that's greater than its parts. It's the Mars and Pisces in you that says, don't forget that each individual part is also an individual that needs to be respected, needs to be catered to, and has its own logical reason and rationale in the alchemy of things. So your Mars and Pisces is a plucky, fun, uninhibited rascal that can kind of grip for its own enjoyment, grip for its own needs, its own preferences. You want to work, the Aquarius in you wants to be regarded as someone who did something that was hard for everybody else to do, that nobody else wanted to do, but you were a pioneer. You went where no one else was considering, and you did this thing that everybody else needed, and you got glory in that way. That's the sun in Aquarius in a nutshell. But the Mars in Pisces here says, I need to do this my way, in a way that I'm going to enjoy. I always say that, what's going on here is that, essentially, the sun is in the sign of an enemy here. Aquarius, anciently, is predominantly ruled by Saturn, and then Aquarius has a secondary rulership. So Saturn is the main vibe of Aquarius, meaning it's the vibe of father. This is what we all need. This is what the family needs. It doesn't matter what your needs are. You need to go out and get a job and serve the family. Then, once the family gets on its own feet and you have food on your table, then you can be an individual. This is kind of the way Saturn and Aquarius tend to work. Now, you'll notice that this is a part of the lesson that I give in all these videos. This is the reason why I say that Saturn is an enemy to the sun. You're asking maybe, what does that mean exactly? Well, notice that the zodiac planets, the planets are split into two different groups, okay? On one hand, we have Saturn, Venus, and Mercury, and they rule the earth and air signs, right? Venus rules Taurus and Libra, earth and air. Gemini rules Virgo and Gemini. Mercury, rather, rules Virgo and Gemini, earth and air. Saturn rules Capricorn and Aquarius, earth and air. So Venus, Mercury, and Saturn all get along, and they do well in each other's signs. On the other hand, on the other side, we have the fire and water signs and their rulers. We have Mars, which rules Aries and Scorpio, fire and water. We have Jupiter, which rules Sagittarius and Pisces, right? Jupiter anciently ruled Pisces in the ancient world. So that's fire, Sagittarius, and water, Pisces. And then the sun rules Leo, and then the moon rules Cancer. So these planets, Sun, Moon, Mars, and Jupiter, are all about the internal self. It's your preference, your emotional preference, your spontaneous enjoyment from within yourself, your comfort. And the comfort in one, the self in one, is the self in all, as I like to say. And that's where the strength of Pisces, the strength of Mars and Pisces here really lies. Because Mars, again, it rules Aries and Scorpio, fire and water. So Mars does well in fire and water signs. This is why I'm saying that, the sun is in the group with Mars. The sun rules Leo. It's a fire sign. So it's going to do well in fire signs and water signs especially, because the sun's best friends, essentially, are Jupiter, the moon, and Mars. All yang expressive planets that have to do with my ego, my expression, my individuality within the collective. Saturn, now on the other hand, it's Saturn, Venus, and Mercury. Mercury is all about communication. How do I communicate with those outside of me? Venus is all about relationship. How do I relate myself to that person? Saturn is all about the world outside of us. How do I relate to my field, my work, my career, my fellow workers, and the field that I'm involving myself in? The intellectual ideals that I abide by, the Aquarian 11th house. Ideals and values, collective values. So the sun, which is more on this self side, is in the sign of Aquarius. That's why I'm saying that the sun is in the sign of an enemy. The king in your chart is it kind of has to lose sense of itself a little bit in order to give respect to the world outside of it. And especially if you have a good sun, if it's got positive aspects, especially from Jupiter or the moon or any benefic planets, the sun is going to be helped in its mission to give respect to the field that it's operating in. Essentially, Aquarians learn the field that they want to go into. They learn the approach to the type of personality that would do well in that field, and then they express it. They perpetuate the vibe of that field, and eventually they blend into who they're trying to be. But even the best Aquarians, when they go up and they do their thing, they're a yogi, or they're a leader, or they're a mechanic, whatever they do. They go and they do the mechanic thing. They put themselves in that personality. They express that position, but then they put it away at the end of the day. And then they go and they're like, all right, I did my part and I get to enjoy myself. And they are a human underneath that visage, right? But they do still are always kind of constantly perpetuate the image that they seek to embody, that everyone would respect them through. Now, essentially, what it comes down to me is that if you have a good Saturn, if your Saturn is well placed, if your Saturn has positive aspects from its friends, Venus and Mercury especially, if it's got trines or aspects from other good benefic planets that are helpful to Saturn, if Saturn is close to its exaltation in Libra, if Saturn is well placed here, then the sun is going to do what it's going to do, and it's going to grip something which is useful for everybody, and the sun will keep its job. The sun will be able to use this Mars' swagger. You have a Mars in Pisces. Now, that's why this is my point here, is that while the king in this chart, the sun, is in a foreign world, a foreign country, and he's seeking to bring a little bit of his country, his signature, his home, to this new place which he is kind of conquering here. Mars in Pisces is the ambassador from the old country that says, sir, you're the king. We have to respect the people of this new land that we're conquering, but you're allowed to trust me. We're a good king, and you're funny, and you're cool, and you're good, and you can trust yourself, and you can use your sense of what's good for you and apply that to this new country, to this new world, to this job, to this career, whatever it is that you're applying itself to. So essentially, Mars in Pisces, because it's in a water sign, where over here, it's thinking about itself. The sun in Aquarius here, it may be dry, and it may be willing to work hard in order to have everyone impressed by it. But you can lose a lot of energy that way. Even if your Saturn is well placed, you know, that just means that you'll be able to keep pushing past how much you're burning yourself out. You can keep burning yourself out, keep not enjoying life, and you'll get a lot from it because you sacrificed. If you have a good Saturn, your sun will sacrifice a lot by being an Aquarius. Ultimately, in this position, because of the Mars and Pisces, it might be frustrating almost, because the king is saying, Lieutenant, Mars and Pisces, I'm not allowed to be so funny. I'm not allowed to express my truth in this moment. I'm not allowed to have an emotional preference for how I do my work here, because I'm working for someone else. The Mars and Pisces in you says, trust me, they're going to like it. You can be yourself. You can lead by your own preference. You can wear the clothes that you want, speak your truth, and find people who work to the same values that you do. It's especially true of this particular Aquarius. And you can do that because that's just what Mars and Pisces does. It's unapologetic about it. It's inside of you to just say what you really think. Now, you can burn people out with this consciousness. You have the Mars is in the second house from the sun here. And the second house kind of is like the platform upon which your sun expresses itself to the world. In Indian astrology, you can have a chart starting from any point. And they have something called the Surya chart, which is the sun chart. Now, the Surya chart for you would start in Aquarius, and Mars would be in the second sign from Aquarius, which is Pisces. This goes to show that the second sign from Aquarius, which is that universal principle, the sun seeks a universal method of dealing with people. Things that will be useful to everybody, things that everybody needs, things that everybody is going to agree with ultimately. Whereas the Mars and Pisces here, it's expressing itself through the second house from that Aquarius. And Pisces, being the second house from Aquarius, means that there is an internal preference principle which is pouring out of the universal needs principle. What I mean by that is, if Aquarius is a universal approach that everybody can understand, then Mars and Pisces is my way of approaching that universal approach. Aquarius very quickly knows if you're in a job with a bunch of people in a band, and each of us has to write a certain amount of songs, and one person is not writing they're not coming up with songs as much. The Aquarius in you will say, I've got my songs, Steve's written their amount of songs, and you haven't written your amount of songs. I mean, not to push you, but, we've all got to contribute here. It's like the Aquarius that can sense that and say that. And it's the Mars and Pisces that will have the balls to come out and say, well, I got my songs done, this Mars and Pisces is also sensitive, and you know how to use this pressure to manipulate others in a positive spirit, because the Pisces in you is buoyantly attracted to everybody reaching out to get the best of their performance, their accomplishments. And you want to do it for yourself, and you also want to do it for other people. Because you're so honest about your desire to reach the heights of what you can do through that Pisces, the Jupiter optimism is expanding Mars. It's expanding your preference for how you create and what you create and who you create with. And it also puts pressure on the creative capacity. You put positive emotional pressure on the creative capacity of those around you, so that you can manipulate their consciousness to say, look, man, you're not going to feel bad, but what is it? What is it that makes you a songwriter? Do you want to contribute your songwriting? And you do. Okay, so the Aquarius here sees you could just be super hard and burn the person out. Come on, we all got to push and do our thing. And there's a little bit of that in you. Aquarius always has a little bit of this. But the Mars and Pisces can roll your shoulders back and say, look, so I know we're all trying to do this thing, and I know you're having trouble with songwriting. So if I help you do this with your songwriting, You know, I can help you. I can sit down. We can work it out. We'll find a method and we'll enjoy it. We'll have a beer and we'll just shoot the shit with it. We'll have fun with it. You know, you have a way of not putting too much pressure on people, but like wink, wink. We got to get this job done, and I'm going to sit patiently with you here until we get it done together. Because the way you come off is sensitive to your own preference, your own emotional preference. You don't like it when other people push you. And this is part of the strength of this particular Aquarius Sun King. It's that you know that you have respect for the place that you're trying to build and the people around you, and you will take shit. You will bow your head and say, yeah, I'm just another employee here and I'm looking to work hard just like everybody else. But if someone comes along and puts pressure on you, you can take it, because Aquarius can take that pressure. But when someone's being a bully and someone's getting their own regard, their own emotional fun out of putting you down, your Mars and Pisces comes through and says, hey, asshole, we're all in this fucking thing together, okay? You don't have to put my face in the mud more than you need to. I get it, you're the boss, but if you keep acting this way, I'm gonna get a mutiny going on real quick. You better fucking calm down with that like finger pointing shit. I'm doing my work. Here it is. This is the work that I've expected to do. Now leave me the fuck alone. That's your Mars and Pisces being willing to fight and stand up for your internal emotional preference, as well as those on your team. You can stand up for those in your team because you love them. It's the Mars gets, like Jupiter is a best friend energy. Pisces makes deep best friends with people. And Mars here, being in Pisces, will get antsy when one of your friends is being knocked down or when they're losing their inspiration for whatever reason. You can say, hey, come on, man, let's do this together. We got this, you know? And, so people will realize with you very quickly that you are a best friend energy in that way. And what you're holding there is an aggressive best friendship. Because it's Mars, which is pushy warrior, inside of Pisces, which is nice, receptive, enjoyment, laughing, honest. Right? And it's through this combination that your dry Aquarius Sun can get great work done by opening up a friendship, a friendly capacity to deliver the hard, bad news to your fellow comrades. Because you can and you should do that. You should take advantage of your capacity to do this with, if you want to take upon yourself the role to be the bearer of bad news all the time, you can if you want. But you don't have to feel so obliged that you just become that annoying guy that is just like a bully telling everyone what's wrong with them or whatever. That's not necessarily your bag. You want to do it as little as possible because the Mars and Pisces in you wants to be useful in its maneuvering of everyone's aesthetic preference towards the common goals that Aquarius is applying them to. It's a really good combination. The Mars and Pisces really saves a lot of the dryness that we expect from Aquarius Sun. So this is a great combination for getting things done collectively because the Mars in Pisces is in the second house from Aquarius. So you are building on an understanding of universal approaches that everybody will enjoy in the Aquarius, but you will also have a deep aesthetic, an understanding of how each individual person will receive those universal approaches. Because you have an aesthetic sense of the individual, but you know what every individual needs to collectively join in and do. But you're also aware that not every individual is going to cater perfectly to the same universal approach. And you can maneuver your team. Ask them. Just be honest with them. What do you prefer? And they'll all feel how much you have a sensitivity, but you'll also throw your weight around in order to get every individual approaching the universal need in their own individual way. It's a very powerful sign for getting stuff done. And in the same way, you could even be somebody who, romantically speaking, you could really be someone who gets a lot done as a power couple person in a relationship, and you're really good at essentially manipulating your partner's emotional feelings so that they feel like you're listening to them. You apply your consciousness of emotional empathy to them in order that you can get what you need to get done. And it might burn your partner out sometimes because you're an Aquarius. You push yourself hard. You're willing to go into the dryness in order to get done what you need to get done in order to seek the glory that you ultimately have the desire and that you seek. And your partner, every Aquarius's partner, is going to get dragged underneath that, social protocol that you stick to. But with your Mars and Pisces, you probably have a way to maneuver, is the right word, not necessarily manipulate, but maneuver your partner's emotional feelings so that, if it's Friday and you got to stay late at work at 6 o'clock because some last minute customer came in and you're a mechanic, and your customer says, hey, it's 5:30. I know you guys close at 6, but I've got a tire that's busted. If you fix this for me, I'll make it worth your while. You'll be able to go to your wife and say, hey, honey, I got to come home late tonight. I know we said I'd get home at 6 and we'd have dinner and we'd have a little bit of a movie date night, but this is an opportunity that I should take advantage of, and I'll make it up to you. And you will be able to promise your lover that you'll make it up to them, wrap it up in a sweet little emotional bow so that you're showing that you care, in order that they don't feel like you're just pushing them off in a certain way. Now, ultimately, that's how you get along. Ultimately, it's going to be up to your moon sign and your Venus sign, the strength of them, if they have positive aspects, if they're well placed, close to their exaltation, close to the 4th house. If your Moon and Venus have all those things, then you'll consider relationship values to be something important to you. You'll have a value in relationships, and you won't just manipulate your lover at those moments. You won't just say, hey, honey, I'm going to be there at 6. Don't worry, baby, it's going to be great. And then you deal with this customer. You don't end up getting home until 7:30 or 8 o'clock, and they say, sorry, honey, but I'll make it up to you, I swear. And then you never end up making it up to them. You could be that kind of person if your relationships don't really mean that much to you, and if your word doesn't mean that much to you. Ultimately, though, as you can see, it would be good for all of your planets to be working at their best and healthiest. So I would recommend that you try to apply this emotional strength and detachment that you have and maneuverability that you have with, a little bit of mutual concourse with those who you maneuver. So that ultimately, the moon is and Venus can actually help you. You don't have to work so hard. You don't have to manipulate the world in a spider web of your manipulation if you just trust that love is coming to you all the time, and that the other people's love is as much of a value as your own. But if you're gonna do you. My point here is to express that the Sun and Mars reading, just because you have Mars and Pisces doesn't necessarily mean that you're gonna have an emotional lovingness any more than anybody else. It just means that your Mars is manifesting the king's wishes through the emotional sphere, and you have a good grip on the emotional sphere. Doesn't mean that you're going to necessarily be a romantic, relationship-centric person. But generally, you are deeply affected by emotions, and others people's emotions gets you kind of riled up, because that's how Mars and Pisces works. And the Aquarius and you can be detached about protecting the emotional welfare of others. And that's a very good energy to have for anybody, especially for an Aquarius who can be so dry. Your dryness is saved by this Mars and Pisces. So that was these videos always end up being long. That was my own spiel on the subject. Now we're going to hear from Erotic Astrology by Phyllis Vega to talk a little bit about Sun in Aquarius with Mars and Pisces at the erotic level, at a tangible romantic level, just so we can get a feel for how this would express in real life. Sun in Aquarius, Mars in Pisces. You go back and forth between Aquarius's detachment and desire for independence, And Pisces is longing to establish an intense connection with a soulmate. I would regard this as saying that you might feel a little bit of friendship, soulmate vibes with anybody who you work with. Anybody who you have a mutual goal to create and manifest with. You might feel like there's a best friend soulmate vibe with them. And you need to be able to work with people. You need to be able to be honest with people. You need to be able to kind of laughingly say what you feel on your mind, and with the humor, and even a cynical, sarcastic humor about the person, about yourself, about yourselves together, and about other people and other couples. You'll probably need somebody who can take your sort of brutal honesty in that sort of regard. And that's where the soulmate vibe kind of comes from. It's this feeling like whoever you're with can ultimately take your exacting, cynical mind, or your honest, outgoing mind. And that's where this, like, you know, the Pisces Mars feels an intense yearning for that kind of shared goal that's so deeply shared that even if you fight like cats and dogs with the person on the way to that goal, you almost enjoy that, as long as you both feel like the reactions are coming through as being a shared, ironic understanding of each other's limitations with each other. That's the Aquarius. Aquarius has a wry humor where it appreciates people's limits and where we can't find harmony on this or that subject. All right, you're like that. All right, I guess I'm like this, but we're both best friends, so let's keep on moving forward. You know, there's an energy there like that. The Pisces Mars yearns for the capacity to have that kind of intimacy, but yet you're afraid of entrapment and emotional vulnerability. I would say that you don't have too much of a fear of that. It's the Aquarius in you that doesn't prefer to get too deeply emotionally attached. And Mars and Pisces can move emotional attachment vibes around, deflect them even. And you might deflect naturally with Mars and Pisces. Oh, yeah, you know, just laughing at things that are sobby or sappy or emotional or whatever. You can just throw them off and show that you are emotionally in tune, when really you're not as in tune as like most other people. But, however, once you overcome your reservations about intimacy, you throw yourself into lovemaking with breathtaking intensity, and you won't stop until both you and your lover are spent. There's a deep sensuality from the Mars and Pisces that is like an open door to something that the Aquarius desperately needs, because you're so dry, so matter of fact. Once the Mars and Pisces gets the feeling that it can let go and laugh and be itself and enjoy its own sensuality with the other person, there's a deep release of that Aquarian dryness. A romantic seduction scene with soft music and sexy apparel is something that can really get this person motor running. You can see that from the sensuality of the Mars and Pisces mixed with the airy, atmospheric appreciation of Sun and Saturn, of Sun and Aquarius. I hope you guys enjoyed that. I hope you guys see what it is that your Mars and Pisces is bringing to that Aquarius Sun of yours, and how they both work together well. I'm Dustin Cormier. This is How to Rock Astrology. This has already been a long video, so I'm going to let you guys go here. Thanks for watching. Feel free to like, feel free to comment, and if you dug my stuff, feel free to subscribe, because I always got more videos coming out. Thanks for watching, folks, and I'll see you guys on the flip side.